Hey everyone out there in bird space, it's time for Out There with the Birds, the podcast sensation that talks about more than migration, with your hosts, Ben Lizdas and Bill Thompson. Out There with the Birds is supported by Kowa Sport Optics, makers of the legendary 883 Prominar spotting scope. Visit sportingoptics.kowa-usa.com to learn more. Additional support comes from the Reader Rendezvous birding adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/rr. But enough of my yakking. Let's boogie. Here they are, Bill and Ben.
All right, Ben, it's first part of March. This will air sometime later than that. Welcome back. We're going to do episode number 7. What is it now?
7. Number 7.
Okay.
Numero 7.
Cool. That seems like way more than I ever thought we'd get done.
It's a milestone of sorts.
It is.
Lucky number 7. I think it's going to be our best podcast yet.
Well, this one's not live. We're back to talking, over the phone, over Skype. So,
yeah,
we'll have to see if the rapport is still there, man.
Yeah, it's not quite the sunny, sandy, salty beach that we're used to, but we'll make do.
So, what you got?
Well, I've got a couple things here geared up to talk about. I have suggestions on an update to the NFL's concussion protocol, and it is bird-related, believe it or not. I want to talk a little bit about what the current international birding hotspots are. I've got one that's on my mind after just speaking with a tour company operator, and it's a destination I've been to. So just kind of wondering what's hot there on the birding travel radar. Songs of spring. Here in Wisconsin, the snow is melting and birds are coming back. So, of course, spring is in the air. And how Warner Brothers had it all wrong. A little reflection on a duo that we know very well.
Okay.
In Warner Brothers history. And then finally wrapping up with a mental health tip for our listeners.
This is a super meaty sandwich you got here.
It is. We might not get to it all, Bill. You never know.
All right. Well, I've got bluebird houses. I want to talk a little bit about that. I've got bird feeding in spring, how we can avoid giving birds gout. And I've got something about a new product that is coming out, launching here pretty soon. I also wanted to talk about our Reader Rendezvous that we're coming up in. We got one in late 2017 and a bunch coming up in 2018. We were talking about that today. And then I got one new musical pick too.
Wow. That is a meaty sandwich.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you want to go first?
Yeah. The other day I got done with actually editing my other podcast, This Birding Life. And that one takes a lot of time and a lot of detailed, focused editing. And I got done and it was like 1:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, and I realized, man, it's sunny, it's sort of mild out. I need to go out and replace some bluebird houses. So we've got 10 or so around a couple of farms on our road, and so I went out and gathered the tools and got stuff together, and before I knew it, I was sucked into this like epic project trying to fix retrofit some bluebird boxes so they would mount on the poles that we already had out on our bluebird trail. It ended up being great, but I worked until well after dark trying to get these things up. The neat thing was the next morning, great feeling, I looked out and there were bluebirds on one of the boxes right outside the house. So that made me feel really good. It's the time of year before, at least here in the Midwest, the cavity nesting birds really haven't started up yet in earnest. So it's a really good time to go out there, check your boxes, see if they're, like in my case, a bunch of the roofs were cracked and the insides were wet, and you could see that, birds hadn't been using them to roost in. So I highly advocate if folks out there are nest box landlords, now's the time to go around and check the old boxes, maybe give them a little bit of a handyman update. Stain them on the outside to make them more waterproof, put a new roof on or whatever. I ended up putting up about 7 boxes that day and a couple of days later, and it makes me feel really good because I feel like I'm doing something truly helpful to cavity nesting birds, which often get out competed for nest places. So I want to just...
And the cool thing about that too, you can see the results.
Yeah.
You go out there and it's one of those things you can do, and you feel good not just in this kind of detached sense, but you actually see the birds there using the real estate you put out for them.
Yeah, yeah. And if anybody's interested, you can go to birdwatchersdigest.com and just search for bluebirds or nest boxes or anything like that. And we've got plans on there for how to mount your boxes, what to look for in a good box. We also publish a bunch of booklets, one of which is called Enjoying Bluebirds More by Julie Zickafoos. And it's got everything you need to know to be a good landlord to the birds. I've also written a few books on the subject, but this is the time of year, early spring, when stuff's kicking in. Now, if you're listening from down in the south, birds might already be nesting. You probably don't want to replace the nest box while they've already started nesting. Wait till the nesting cycle is over. Go in there and swap it out then. But if we're going to be good landlords, we have to give our tenants good housing.
All right. I like it. Little public service announcement there, huh?
Ding.
So what I've got here kind of going on from bird architecture to human architecture, and this gets to my, the NFL's concern with concussion protocol. We all know it's been in the news big time. Well, they're paying quite a bit more attention to the safety of their players, knocking their noggins into one another on a regular basis. It could be a PR thing, whatever. They're paying attention to it. However, I think the NFL needs to consider requiring birds flying near the new U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to wear helmets.
I think so, because they're crashing into the glass the facade of that stadium. And I remember when they were building that, and a bunch of people rose up and protested it. And of course, the NFL is a monolith. I mean, it's like the giant mega money printing mega machine. Everybody loves the violence of football, so I guess they're a little bit callous to the violence that's happening to the birds migrating through the Twin Cities, huh?
It's, as a fan of the architecture, I like architecture, I like design. It's a beautiful building. It's got 200,000 square feet of high reflective glass on it, though, and it is a death machine for birds. It's got almost a 5-acre park right next door to it, which just reflects right off of that stadium. So the stadium looks like a park, looks like the sky. It's along the Mississippi Flyway, so critical migratory corridor. And the owners of the stadium and the team, the Minnesota Vikings, have just announced they are going to spend $300,000 to do a 3-year study to determine whether or not the stadium kills birds.
Jeez. I think we already know the answer to that, man. Gee whiz.
I think it's just buying them 3 years. I read that and I was just really.
Well, by that time it'll be time to build a new stadium anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they're Vikings. They should be making their stadium out of wood.
And I have to disclose here, I'm a Wisconsinite, Green Bay Packers fan.
Yeah, see, I sensed there was a little bit of.
It isn't just anti-Vikings.
Why not just grind the stick in a little bit more? But, seriously, all cities all over the place have these big glass windows. And, there are lots of products out there that help deter birds. But really, the only thing that can prevent them would be netting. And, I wonder if the NFL and the Vikings ownership would be willing to do something to mitigate this death trap. One of the solutions from an architectural standpoint that's been put out there, although it's very expensive, is to angle those glass facades downward so they reflect the ground, and then you don't have any birds flying into them because the birds aren't confused at what that is. The birds aren't going to fly toward the ground.
In the case of building this many stories, if you're up towards the top of the building, reflecting toward the grounds, you're going to reflect the treetops.
Yeah, probably so.
So that's going to be another thing.
Right.
What's cool about this story, though, in and of itself, is making national news. This is not something that I saw in like a Audubon chapter headline or American Bird Conservancy news. This is regular network news is picking up on this, and hopefully, it at least brings some attention to. Yep. Collisions and window strikes, but a lost opportunity. There were people with Minneapolis Audubon raising this flag well before this building was constructed, and rather than spending $300,000 on a 3-year study to figure out whether or not the stadium is killing birds, it would have been nice if they would have just done some different type of glass, the etching some sort of interruptive dots in the glass, I guess was a consideration that they decided not to do some sort of screening or film on the glass. But anyways, we get what we get.
Birds have a hard enough time making it. We don't need to make it worse on them. Speaking of making it better on birds, this time of year, I'm kind of in the backyard in this week's podcast, Ben. But I noticed that we've been having this crazy weather. It'll be warm, and then all of a sudden it's cold. Like right now, it's super cold again. And boy, the birds are really flocking to the feeders in this cold weather. I don't like to put out there that birds rely on our feeders utterly for their survival, because that's just not true from a biological standpoint. Birds have evolved over the eons to be mobile in search of food, and they have wings and they use them and all that stuff. However, this is the time of year when the natural food crops are often at their nadir, their lowest point. The berries, the fruits, the dogwoods,
picked off over the course of winter, blown off.
Yeah, and the sumac has all been eaten. I mean, sumac is kind of starvation food for a lot of those fruit and insect-eating birds. And I noticed that a lot of that stuff is just gone. The trees aren't budded out yet. We're not having any insects, so the fruit eaters can't transition over yet. So this is a really good time of year to offer some high protein, high fat foods at your feeder. Things like sunflower hearts, which are easy for even seed-eating, insect-eating birds to sometimes eat. But also crumbled up little bits of suet or suet dough. And again, we have recipes for that on the birdwatchersdigest.com website. But also, it's a great time of year to offer things like peanuts or little bits of crumbly up peanut butter, or even mealworms, like a live food like mealworms. You can go to a bait store and buy mealworms and offer those. And birds that'll eat those are the birds that really require sort of high energy. And years ago, we attracted bluebirds into our mealworms and suet dough, and we learned an important lesson. We got so excited that these things were coming in so close to eat our mealworms and our suet dough. And then we just fed them as much as they wanted, and they were coming in all the time, and they super reproduced that summer. And by the end of the summer, the female looked like she was about ready to keel over. The other thing we noticed that fall is the female started getting swelling on her feet. And we determined that this was probably due to gout, having too much fat in the diet, probably from the suet dough. And so we realized very quickly and spread the word in all the channels we could that you want to feed these super high fat things in moderation. You don't want to feed raw suet in the summer because it can get rancid. The woodpeckers and other birds can get it on their breast and take that back to the nest. You don't want to feed mealworms in overabundance because the birds can super reproduce. And you don't want to feed things like suet dough in overabundance too, because the fat in that can cause gout in birds, believe it or not, just like it did with King Henry VIII. So feed in moderation is my recommendation.
So I have a question then. Yeah. Now, I don't live as rurally as you do, so don't really get too many bluebirds in my little village, lot. And if I'm putting out things like mealworms and suet dough, I don't think I'm going to attract necessarily the kind of birds you're getting.
Right.
I'm just wondering if that would be food that all the house sparrows that come and empty my feeders every day are going to be attracted to, or
they'd go nuts. They'd go nuts. They'll eat anything. They'll swing down and grab a French fry right out of your mouth. So
yeah. Hey, so speaking of eating anything, Warner Brothers had it all wrong. This is just something that I saw this afternoon that I thought was so cool.
Okay.
So you remember the coyote and roadrunner, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
And the coyote.
I was always rooting for the coyote. Man. I was always hoping that just once he would grab that thing by its scrawny little neck and just bite its head off.
But exactly, and that's kind of what we expect the coyote to do. The predator there, and the roadrunner, kind of the intelligent, dorky, fast, charming character that he was. So roadrunners, though, are voracious predators.
Yeah, they are.
Voracious predators. And if you go on YouTube and you plug in you just search for on the term "a wildlife photographer's dilemma."
Okay.
you'll come up with a video that someone shot of these hummingbirds circling this hummingbird feeder, and this roadrunner just sitting right beneath it, crouching in the vegetation, and in midair just snatches a hummingbird right out of the air. Oh my gosh! Kind of getting back to that, nature tooth and nail. We talked about it last week. We were talking about falcons getting Ross's gulls.
Right. I've actually seen that happen one time out at one of those famous feeders in Arizona. I saw a hummingbird get nailed, and it wasn't I think we were out there trying to see a violet-crowned hummingbird, and it wasn't the one that got nailed, but everybody was panicked that it was going to be. It ended up being one of the young, I think, Rufus hummers or something like that was kind of, not totally with it yet, not completely wary. And this roadrunner came trotting around the corner of the house like nothing was going on, jumped up, nailed this hummingbird, whacked it a couple of times, and trotted away with it. The other hummers just kept going like, yeah, that was Fred. I warned him.
It's interesting when these non-traditional predator-prey relationships, and people who know and who've studied roadrunners could tell you, oh yeah, that's a a predator, through and through. Nothing non-traditional about that. It also reminds me of, we were going through the next issue of Birdwatchers Digest, looking at the various articles in there, and there was an article about deer predating on bird nests, reaching up into trees and eating eggs, eating chicks out of bird nests. So once again, who would have thought, right?
I know. And the headline, I think, said deer eating birds. And if there'd been a hyphen between deer and eating, it could have meant birds that were eating deer, which I'd like to see, actually. I guess, in the winter here up at the Wilds north of Marietta, about an hour, often we'll see golden eagles coming into deer carcasses. So I suppose that would qualify as deer eating birds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. March, April of Birdwatchers Digest, current issue. Check it out.
Yep.
So I want to take things from the backyard and go international.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about what's hot on birders' radars these days for international birding. And I was talking to a tour company owner, I guess, the other day, and he was saying Cuba is the hot ticket for his company.
Ay caramba.
Can't sell enough Cuba trips. Just boom, boom, boom. It's the hot destination. And I had a chance to go to Cuba this past summer.
Aye, Poppy.
And I can see the allure there. I mean, 25 endemic species, right?
Right.
That's you got my attention right there.
Right. Cuban cigars.
It has restricted access.
Right.
Not necessarily like hopping on a plane going to Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
It's super close to the U.S.
Right.
Like you alluded, cigars, rum, great weather. What's not like
Good
classic
music.
cars, good music, gracious residents there, and the Cuban tody, super adorable bird.
Yep.
So it's got all the makings for a birding hotspot. Have you heard anything as of late? Have you heard anything about what the hot destinations are for birding?
Well, I'm hearing a lot about that. But also, sticking in this hemisphere, I've been hearing lots of people talking about Colombia, talking about Nicaragua. Nicaragua seems to be kind of rising on the radar. Both places that have had, reasons not to go there in the past for political unrest or revolutionary sort of stuff going on. But I think both of those are kind of coming up on the map, and I've heard invitations for people to travel there, and I've seen tour companies putting itineraries down, going to those places. So I think that's kind of cool. I would really like to go to either one of those places. Never been to either one. Colombia, of course, is famous for its biodiversity. It's got, it's always neck and neck with Ecuador because they've got the biomes going, from lowland forest all the way up to cloud forest there and everything in between. Nicaragua, I guess, it's relatively unexplored, kind of like Guatemala was maybe 10 years ago. So both those places are kind of on my radar. But I'd like to go to Cuba too. I mean, I think that would be really cool. I just haven't had an opportunity to do so yet.
I think of Nicaragua as really prime wintering habitat for golden-winged warblers.
Oh yeah.
That's where they like to go. It'd be really cool to go down there and see some of those guys.
Speaking of traveling, we were sitting in the conference room today here at Birdwatchers Digest for hours, wrestling and debating over our reader rendezvous choices for 2018 and 2019. And some of the places that we're talking about, I'll just give everybody a little taste of that, but we're talking about possibly doing maybe a South Texas thing in November. We're thinking about maybe doing a chicken trip out of Denver in the grasslands out there. Probably wouldn't be a super extensive chicken trip, but we'd try to get 3 or 4 of the grouse, sage grouse, Gunnison sage grouse maybe species, and then do some western birding. We haven't really done a western rendezvous yet. I think the farthest west we got was maybe Hibbing, Minnesota. We're thinking about going back to Space Coast in Florida again. Thinking about longer term, maybe going to the Gulf Coast of Florida and maybe tacking a little baseball on. Those are some of the places we're talking about. We got a few.
Pico Bonito.
Yeah, and Pico Bonito.
That in Honduras, that'll be the first tropical birding destination for Reader Rendezvous if you're not counting the Rio Grande Valley. Anyways.
Right, or Florida, which is subtropical, I guess. But so there's some of the places we're thinking about, and lining them up. We've got one final rendezvous that's going to be happening here in 2017, right at the end of November. We're going to be doing the Rock and Roll Rendezvous in Cleveland. We're going to go birding in the morning, and we're going to hit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the afternoon on Friday, and then we've got a bunch of other fun, cool stuff planned. So
that'll be a good time.
People should be watching birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. And there's a page there where you can sign up if they're interested in hearing more about it. Okay.
All right. So you've been out tackling bluebird boxes, and we're talking about signs of spring here, and for me in Wisconsin, one of the quintessential signs of spring is hearing sandhill cranes coming back.
Oh yeah.
That telltale call that just resonates, and we talked about this in past episode of Out There with the Birds. It's got that French horn type trachea, just bellows out that unique call. To me, it's almost like the agricultural field version of a loon. Loons have that really loud resonating. Yeah, there we go.
There's some going over right now.
Yeah,
in my office.
So that's a sign of spring I've been hearing quite a bit as of late.
That's so awesome.
And also, and just general increase in bird song.
Yep.
This is that time of year where things you go out in the morning and things are louder than they've ever been before.
Yep.
And an interesting new app just came out that can help you identify bird songs. Have you heard about songs?
I've heard about it, but I want to hear for you. Tell me.
Song Sleuth. So this is an app that is a bird song identifier. You can record a bird song,
right?
Birds, and essentially what happens is the app uses an algorithm to, and your location to give you either a short list or immediately identify the bird that you're listening to. David Sibley collaborated on this project. We all know who David Sibley is, and kind of put in some work with some other add-ons for the app. $10.
Nice.
$10. You can get this app that'll help you identify bird songs.
So
about 200 species of birds. So
not everything.
Not everything.
Yeah.
I've not used it. I don't know how well it works. And my first thought, and once again I haven't used it, but my disclaimer is: does something like this help you learn bird songs, or does it become a crutch?
Good question. Because I was going to say, I guess this is me putting on my old fogey hat here for a second.
It's your birthday tomorrow, Bill.
It is. I'm going to get my golden Buckeye card and go down and get the $2 mashed potatoes. This plus Merlin, the amazing app that Cornell Lab puts out, that you can put in the crappiest of photos and it can almost always tell you what it is. They've refined it over the years, of research and development. I'm wondering if it's going to make people like, they're just not even look at the birds. They'll just take a picture, send it to their app. It'll tell them what it is, record it off the front. I'm almost wondering if is that going to bring more people in because it's cool and anybody can do it? Or is it going to make people like kind of lazy, or like what the remote did for television watching? I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I think technology is cool. I think these things that are advancing our knowledge of bird everything and science and nature, I think all of that is cool. I'm way in favor of it. But it's going to be very interesting to see what the long-term impact of these, hey, let me make this idiot proof for you. What these kind of apps, what are they going to do for us?
Yeah. Well, for $10, I might give it a shot just to see. But once again, only 200 bird species though. So at any given morning in Ohio.
Well, I want you to download it and then go out and see if it can tell you what those loud sandhill cranes are flying over your house.
I wonder if it'll do chip notes. I wonder if like during an evening migration, if I can hold it up and if it'll get chip notes for me.
My guess is you probably aren't going to have enough amplification, to record stuff that far away. It's probably got to be.
I'll be sure the battery's fully charged on my phone.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, what else you got?
I've just got finally my mental health tip.
Okay.
For our birders. This was an article I saw a friend of mine post on Facebook that came up in Science Daily, and from the University of Exeter in Great Britain, and they have just concluded a study that determined that people living in neighborhoods with more birds, shrubs, and trees are less likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and stress, according to research by academics at the University of Exeter.
Okay. So
they have found that they have studied the level of bird activity and in any given neighborhood, any given time of day, and found that it directly correlates with lower levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. And it was associated with the numbers of birds people could see in the afternoon. So it has nothing to do with diversity. This isn't how many species you see, whether they're grackles or, robins, who names it. Just seeing birds makes people happier.
Good.
So that's my mental health tip for all of our listeners. If you're not yet a bird watcher, because I know there's lots of non-bird watchers who listen to this podcast just for our witty banter.
Right.
But I would suggest you go out and listen to birds just for your mental health.
Please do. And I hope they don't do a study on what this podcast does to people's mental health, because that could be devastating.
I attribute my bubbly personality to bird watching.
Yeah. I attribute my the light inside my inner soul to bird watching. And the fact that I let that out as often as possible makes me feel good.
Whenever you let that out, I was going to crack a window.
Oh, that's what that is. See, I thought that was the light for my soul. Ben, as always, you're the wind between my cheeks. I love talking to you. It's been great. And I think I have one quick music recommendation. 3 words. Ryan Adams, Prisoner. That's his new record. It's worth a listen. I just downloaded it. It's really, really nice. And a little bit more rockin' than his last Ashes and Fire album, which I really loved. But that guy's prolific. I have a huge amount of admiration for him. So his
relation to Bryan Adams.
No. Okay. Ryan Adams. The album's called Prisoner. Check it out.
All right,
dude.
That's some solid advice. Well, Bill, you have a great birthday tomorrow.
Yeah, buddy, and you have a great not birthday tomorrow. And I will talk to you soon, and we will see everyone else out there with the birds. Right?
Yeah.
Later, dude.
That's a wrap for this episode of Out There with the Birds. Special thanks to Koa, our optics sponsor. Learn more about their fine line of birding products at sportingoptics.koa-usa.com. We're also supported by the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Your next birding adventure starts at birdwatchersdigest.com/rr. Tune in next time for some more noise from the boys, Bill and Ben. Until then, keep your eyes to the skies, and we'll see you out there with the birds. Ciao!